When printing on paper with the new Gen 3 inks, there's some things to understand to probably help you better understand the complexity of the paper market and how that affects your choices on the printer. Now, if you want to print on paper on a latex, we'll just say 360, my first and unambiguous recommendation is there's two papers that HP manufactures. One is called, what I have here, which is the HP Professional Satin. It also comes in a gloss. And then there is the HP Everyday Satin. Both of those papers are excellent. One is a little thicker than another. This is the Professional, which is a little thicker. So when someone wants to print the best the printer prints on paper, this is what I choose. It is a resin coated. It is specifically developed for this generation of latex. It's excellent paper. It prints beautiful. So if you just don't want to think about it and you want a really nice quality paper print, this is it. Now, the resin coating, this is a higher end paper. It costs a little more. I think it's still very reasonable, but it costs a little more than some alternatives. But this is what I print on when I don't ask questions. I want quality. Your next choice, I have a couple of them that I like. The first of which is a Neenah. Now, Neenah is a large paper manufacturer. They are a manufacturer. There's three companies sort of under the Neenah umbrella, which we've used extensively, the Converd, Fibermark, and Neenah. So this is the Neenah Photo Satin. Neenah Photo Satin, I think, is on the media locator at this point. This is a very economical paper. It's a nice satin photo paper. This is a really good day-to-day economical choice if you want to print on poster paper. Now, another choice in the same category is made by HP. This is the Premium Poster Paper, the HP Premium Poster Paper. This was released this year, and this is really a replacement for the HP Photorealistic Poster Paper. For a long time, latex users would always use the photorealistic poster paper, and on a Latex 260 it works fantastic. Well, on a 360 it doesn't work quite as well. It has to do with the way paper is formulated and the way the 360 prints using the optimizer and the way it applies ink. The 260, very good on the photorealistic poster paper. The 360, not so much. Very different animals. Very different technologically. So HP released this poster paper. This is a new formulation. This replaces that SKU. This is a good choice. This and the Neenah are two of my go-to papers, especially in the price point. Also, there's a new one from Sil in the similar price point. It's Sil Trisol. That's also quite a nice paper. It's a little thicker. I think it's 200 gram or so. I have had a chance to run it. Unfortunately, I don't have one with me, but I like a lot of the Sil papers as well. Now, I'm moving on to another type of paper. This is a wet strength paper. Now, this is also made by Neenah. It's called Fibermark Endura. This is on the media locator. I like the satin. They have a gloss. They have thinner versions of it too. The Endura is a wet strength poster paper. By wet strength, that is, they impregnate it actually with a little bit of latex, and it has limited outdoor durability. So if this gets wet, it's pretty resistant to paper, what normally does, which is sort of disintegrate. This is a wet strength paper. Not a lot of manufacturers make wet strength, but this does have short-term outdoor durability, and it functions equally well just as a standard paper, like a poster paper. And I like this Fibermark Endura quite a bit. This is very widely used in the industry, and it's also very cost-effective. HP also makes a wet strength paper. This is the HP satin poster paper, white satin poster paper. This is also wet strength. And this is another good choice. I'm quite fond of wet strength papers with the 360. They're highly compatible. The way the 360 applies ink and it carries over the curing zone, a lot of the wet strength papers work pretty well. Now this is a Felix Schoeller. This is more of an offset coated. Now this is a metallic, has kind of a metallic paper quality. This is an offset coated. When you switch to more of the offset coated papers on the Latex 360, there's a couple things to keep in mind. One, you can't put too much heat and you can't put too much ink. If you put too much heat and too much ink together, the paper is going to cockle, and that cockling is going to cause print quality problems. Sometimes the cockling is evident right in the print path. It'll form like a kind of a undulation from the water, and the carriage will touch it and you'll have a little head strike mark or a carriage strike mark. Other instances, it'll travel fine in the print zone, and then as it hits the curing zone with all of that ink together, the middle will come up and you'll get it to pop in the center, and then right down the middle of your prints, in the middle of a 60-inch wide roll, you'll see little scratch marks. That's happening in the curing zone. It's because there is too much ink and too much heat, and the two together, especially on a lot of offset papers, will cause it to scratch. The solution is, give or take, 12 pass, 175, 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you keep the ink down a bit. So let's say 80%, 90% ink. And you'll still, in many cases, get a very nice print. And these are offset coated papers where the price is considerably lower. Now, all offset coated papers are going to have different coatings, different surfaces. Some ink take ink better than others. There's going to be a lot of variability there, and you'll sort of have to sort out your own way. But if you see it coming up or popping or cockling, the solution is lower temperature, less ink, and in some cases I'll use an inner pass delay to compensate for putting the lower temperature down. This is another example. For example, this is almost nearly a 12-point cardstock. It's an on-demand. On-demand is a digital converter, and they were long-term partners with them. This is a heavier weight paper, so I'm going to turn the vacuum up to make sure this stays down. So I might run vacuum at 80%, and then I'm going to keep the ink level a bit low, keep the temperature down. In some cases, I may use a take-up roll to help a little bit, but I try to print everything without the take-up roll, and if everything works without it, then the take-up roll is sort of an added bonus. Now, we found that on the 570, 560, the take-up roll I tend to put on almost right away because the distance from the platen to the take-up roll is so short, and the take-up roll gives me an easy assist right out of the gate. So another one, which is from On Demand Digital, this is a very inexpensive digital 100-pound silk offset. Now, if you look very closely, it'll be a little hard for the camera to pick up, but on the surface of the paper, you can see sort of a modeling effect. I can see it at an angle here. It might be kind of tough for you guys to pick up, but you'll know what I mean when you see it, especially with an offset paper. There's a distinctive modeling pattern. So instead of totally smooth as the light hits it, there's sort of almost like a splotchiness. Not in the ink, but it almost looks like on the surface of the paper. That is the surface of the paper. That's essentially what's causing it. When you get into these lower ink or lower cost offset digital papers, which, this might cost 6-7 cents a square foot, it prints fine, but you're still going to have a little bit of that. On the bigger latex printers, the Latex 3000 series and the 1500, the way that the printer is built allows you to put more ink down efficiently and still keep the temperatures low. They also have a different paper path, which involves a great deal more tension on front and back. What those printers do is they just put a whole nother level of ink down, and that ink smooths out that irregularity. On a Latex 360, I can't put that much ink down because, as we spoke a little earlier, if you put too much ink down on an offset coated paper, the paper will react to the ink, to the amount of water in the ink basically. It will cause cockling, and you're going to have issues along those lines. So to a certain extent, the image quality on offset is good, but it's not great. And some offset papers may also have superior coatings, and those coatings may be of help. For example, there's a cardstock I've run on the 570 made by a company called Red Paper. And this has an acrylic coating on the inside of the roll. So you print on the inside of a roll on a 12-point cardstock, and even though I'm running with a low ink signature and I'm using a lot of vacuum and I have the temperature low, the coating is giving me more pop, and I'm getting a very nice looking print even though I'm not using very much ink. It's one of the better cardstocks that I've run because it is what I would call coating assisted. So here's here's a whole group of cardstocks. This is from On Demand, which is a cast coat, Sil Glamour Photo board, which is an S12, and then the Fibermark Luster board. Now all of those to some degree, the Luster board certainly a little bit on the Sil, which seems a little bit better. All of those have a little bit of that modeling to greater or lesser degree, and to some extent it's going to be more or less visible depending on the images you choose to print. But you can't make that go away completely on a 300 series. These type of papers do very well on the larger printers. The larger printer also has the ability, by larger I mean the 3000s, They also have the ability to have a 6-inch core converter, which is kind of necessary as you get to cardstocks 12-point and thicker, because you really have to have that spring taken out of it, and when you put thick cardstock on a 3-inch core, it's just wound too tight, and then you have problems getting through the print path. Some other papers, just of oddities and interest. This is a stone paper. This is by Mist Enterprises, and this is actually comprised of stone. I don't know if that makes it not a paper. It's a something. Maybe it's some kind of new polypropylene stone paper. But the chemistry of this is very different. And what's nice about the latex is there's really not much on a roll that one way or another I can't figure out how to run. It's just always going to be speed, temperature, and ink load, adjust the vacuum. This is very thin, so you might, I think I remember putting this on a take-up reel because if it just pushes, it tends to fold on itself. So it needs a little tension on the front to be able to run. Now this is a fine art paper. This is made by Optica One. It's a smooth fine art paper. The print itself has seen a little bit of abuse. Normally you would print this and then you would frame it or put it under glass. This is a matte finish. When you use a high quality fine art paper, which is what this is, and this is a more expensive paper, but this prints absolutely beautiful on a latex printer. When this comes off the printer, it looks fantastic. It's a beautiful matte finish. There's no modeling whatsoever. I have a nice rich background color, but this would be designed for, say, hotels. When you go into a hotel room and you see a nice matted print, this would be the paper that they would use. And you can run this on a latex printer, and like all aqueous printers, it prints real well on this. This does not buckle, this does not cockle, this does not warp, and this does not mottle. It's a nice print, and that's because the paper is a very high grade, but you also see that when you check the price. I wanted to show you a few other prints. This is a Tyvek. Now there's two types of Tyvek. There's regular old Tyvek, which I'll show you in a second, and then there's HP DuPont Tyvek. Now HP's ink chemists and coaters got together with Tyvek to make a Tyvek that has a coating on it. And that coating is going to give it better image quality because it prevents the fibrousness of Tyvek from showing through. It smooths it all out, but it also costs more. But HP has had this Tyvek on the market for a long time. It's widely used by, like, the US Navy, for example, and other map companies, people that have to have prints that are very weather and water resistant and can take a lot of beating. And this Tyvek is for that. Now, I've also been given Tyvek, just Tyvek. And this is a very thin, inexpensive Tyvek. And when it prints, you can see in the black that there's a little bit of the fiber showing through. But for most applications, especially if it's, this is probably used for short-term outdoor, say, advertising. You know, in some cities where they staple everything to kiosks, this Tyvek is going to be very durable outside, more so even than a wet-strength paper. And it's very inexpensive as it goes. It's just a thin Tyvek, runs great on a latex printer. And lastly, we have our synthetic papers, sometimes called polypropylene. It's what it is. Probably the best synthetic paper right now on the market, if I were to just give you a clear direction, I'd say HP Everyday Polypropylene. That's a great product. It is coated. It prints beautiful, it's easy, but that coating is what gives that polypropylene a chance to really shine. Without the coating, like this Yupo, Hopsin, Transil, you're going to tend to have some difficulty on a 360 printing on polypropylene. It can be done, but you're probably looking, as you see here, this is a 12 pass and it's right on the margin. I probably used a high interpass delay. Usually you're looking at 16 pass, very low temperature signature, maybe 170 degrees, 165 degrees. At a certain point when the temperature is so low, nothing is going to cure properly. This is a thicker polypropylene. I have to run low temperature and very slow. And I still can't put very much ink on it. My guess is 80% ink. If you have a polypropylene with a coating, I believe DAF makes a polypropylene with a coating. I hear that Hopsin has a version of polypropylene out there through a third party that may have a coating on it. A coated polypropylene or a coated synthetic paper is going to have a better chance on a latex, especially if it's aqueous coated. Now, with the new 560 and the 570, I haven't done it yet, but I am hearing that a lot of these polypropylenes, because of the greater efficiency of the curing zone, and the ability to print more ink at a lower temperature, these all may come back into play in a big way because I'm going to have a bigger sweet spot and it's going to be easier to print on these standard grade polypropylenes. Yupo is probably the best known in the United States. So Yupo will run on a 360, but it's got a small sweet spot. 560, 570, we have very good confidence that we're going to be, much better. It'll be very saleable at a faster speed. And then the 1500 and 3000s have been able to print on all of that polypropylene and synthetic paper for a long time. Just different printers that can put more ink down at lower temperatures. Hopefully that helps with the paper proposition. There's a lot of different types of papers, and they matter to understand in how you address them on the latex printer and also to set expectations. If you just want a bulletproof paper that's going to give you beautiful results every time, yeah, that HP Professional is a nice paper. That resin-coated stuff, perfect. But you can also start experimenting with other papers depending on what the customer's expectations are and depending on what your price point is. And they will work, they do run, have at it. Just keep in mind, some papers you're really going to have to get that temperature down. You can't put too much ink down. I recommend starting it off at 12 pass, and then some cases you're going to have to get that vacuum involved as well.